to everybody, and welcome back to Survive to Thrive. It's another week, and it's another guest joining us for an interview. Now, today, we're all hugely lucky to be joined by somebody who's actually quite a little bit difficult to describe. Some people call him author, some people call him thought leader, according to his bio. Some people call him public speaker, task force leader, innovation guru I've heard about, but generally they say he's an all-round good guy. So I'd like to say a very warm welcome to David Downs, champion for all innovators out there in New Zealand. How are you doing?
I'm very good. Are we twin brothers? It looks like we might actually be from the same stock.
It's like a brother from another mother. It's like
here done.
We got the same hairdresser. It's beautiful. I almost put on a dark shirt as well. That would have been the perfect memo.
Very weird, yeah.
It would have been a mirror. Have you been? How's lockdown at home treated you? Has it been your idea of hell or your idea of heaven?
No, it's funny. Because I see myself as a bit of an extrovert, sort of, but actually, which means that normally you would really be craving the outside world. But actually, I had a lovely time. I was at home with my wife and two of my three children, and we had a lovely time. And it was working crazy hours, but we managed to stop most days at 2:00 and play board games together for about half an hour. That was like our family thing to do. And so we just made little traditions like that. We took the dog for a walk. The dog, after a while, just got fed up being walked so much and refused to come out with us. So yeah, it was a weird time, but I feel very privileged to be able to say that, because obviously not everyone's in that sort of position of being able to be, safe and warm in a home. But, we were, and it was great.
Yeah, absolutely. But I understand that's like when you say you're busy during lockdown, that might have been just a little bit of an understatement, so that you actually got yourself quite hardwired into a project to try to help bring some local support back into our community business. And you launched an organisation. Tell us a little bit about how you fitted that in amongst dog walks, board games,
and doing a job. Because I was actually working at the time as well. Yeah, no, this I think you're referring to the SOS business, which was an initiative I set up, kind of a charitable project that just snowballed into this massive hairball of a job, but it was great. Essentially what we were trying to do is solve the problem of local business. Like in my day job, I work for the government, and we think about big picture economy and international growth and, all this kind of, large stuff. But actually, fundamentally, businesses and small business makes up an economy. And I was talking to the guys, a guy at a cafe down the road from me and saying, look, what are you going to do over lockdown? And he just said, no cash flow is going to come in. So that, I thought initially, I just thought, I'll jump online and buy a coffee a week or a cup of, a lunch voucher or something. But he couldn't sell them because he didn't have a website that could sell. And then I looked around the neighborhood and nobody could. So I started one up and thought, I can do that. I know how to set up an e-commerce website. That's easy. And I set one up and started selling on their behalf as kind of the agent, selling vouchers. And then the word got around, and more vendors came on, and more people came and bought vouchers, which was wonderful. And then the media got involved, and luckily I got helped by two amazing people from Shopify who helped me kind of pull together a more robust technology platform. And that project sort of went huge through the whole of the lockdown process. It's been incredible.
So what's it taught you most about the behaviour of Kiwis, like getting behind this and actually caring about what happens in the economy that's 1 or 2 kilometres from them?
Yeah, I think it's great. It's been this real zeitgeist of opinion about local business and small business being really critical to not only economically to an economy. 98% of New Zealand businesses are small businesses, as in fewer than 50 people. So it's important economically, but also from a kind of social fabric, community sense. And that was where I think a lot of people wanted to get involved. Certainly when we talked to the vendors and the businesses who are on the platform who were selling vouchers, one of the things they really noticed was it was their local communities that were coming in and supporting them. And, you think about your own experience. You go into your favorite coffee shop, fairly regularly probably, and you buy a flat white and you have a chat with the owner or the person making your coffee. It's just an important part of life. It normalizes. And during COVID, obviously things weren't normal for anybody. And, so I went out there with this message of, if you feel like a flat white, buy one. You just won't get it for a few weeks. But jump online and buy a voucher for a flat white, and you'll feel better. They'll get the money. They'll feel better. And one day you'll get coffee. So I think that's one thing it taught me is that people want to have this connection with their local community.
Yeah. So this, I mean, plainly, the threat of recurrence isn't going to go away anywhere soon, as the terrible stories from Australia in the last couple of weeks have taught us so starkly. So the need for this, the need for a tool to remain connected to your local economy is never been more important. Where it's like, what does this change in behaviour, do you think, in the medium term suggests that might happen to our local communities? Are they at risk of getting weaker as it just becomes harder to carry the risk of being a small business? Or do you think technology like this and innovation can actually help to take some of that risk out and make them more robust?
Yeah. It's an interesting time, isn't it? Because you've got these waves of quite large societal shifts that are going on. One is the idea that there's an internet economy, and people love buying stuff online, and they love being able to go to Amazon or Trade Me and get stuff. But what that has, the impact that has on your physical communities locally can be tough. Small businesses find it hard to compete. And then what we've seen through COVID is that actually people want small businesses. You want a local community. You love your local shops. So these things are sort of colliding a little bit and jockeying for position. With the SOS thing, what we noticed definitely is this desire for people to keep local business going and potentially even pay a premium to do it. It's hard to buy a coffee online and get it online, but other goods and services you could probably buy online cheaper. But actually, people are supporting local. Our challenge as New Zealand is that actually we've got to think about what does that mean in our place in the world, because we are a net exporter, significant net exporter. The whole buy local message is a great message to a point, but actually, the logical extension of that for New Zealand is not necessarily the best outcome. So we've got to really find that fine line of where are we the best at what we can be locally, and where can we collaborate or buy internationally. So I think there's still a bit of work to be gone through there to get those sorts of things sorted out.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, and we were talking to good folk from Kia right the way through this as well, and talking about the relative health of brand New Zealand and the way to leverage it. When we're talking about buying, the trend of buying local, of course, this is now global. Buying local is global. Do you think that's apart from being difficult to get your head wrapped around again, it's like, is this an existential threat to trade? The idea that everyone's going to react and to shrink in and to look closer to home. Do you think this might actually end up with more significantly changing some global trade patterns?
I think, as I said, I think it could potentially have an impact for New Zealand, given we're a net exporter. And if you trace this through, I mean, you've already seen this over the years with things like concern about food miles or environmental impact of travel. To ill-informed consumers, they could make decisions that are based, on on one dimension, like something like that, versus a holistic dimension of, total impact on the carbon footprint of the earth, or animal welfare, or human health. And so we've got to be careful we don't let these kind of one-dimensional arguments win. I come at it from this New Zealand point of view of one of our values to the world is we create amazing, high-value, high-quality, good for human food, and therefore we want to make sure that we have an opportunity to kind of market that with all these multiple dimensions, not just saying, oh, your lamb's from New Zealand, it's too far away. So I guess, that's the balance that we're going to have. The buy local thing, I think, as I say, I started the SOS business thing at a local cafe level. Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me to be encouraging local and sustainable and etc. But as I say, the macro factors are quite interesting as well when you get there.
Yeah, it almost. Do you think there's room now for a Buy New Zealand, a resurgence of that sort of nationalism again? You got Russian dolls of Buy Local that are actually in play here. Is it time for us at a government level to be saying, actually reminding us as consumers to make sure that we're supporting the businesses who are supporting our communities and giving us jobs?
Yeah, well, I think 760,000 people who are on the Facebook group Buy New Zealand Local, all of whom joined in the last 3 months, would say that you're right. It's been incredible to see that, and lots of local authorities, councils, and etc. have got their Buy Local campaign. Because I'm a good government guy, I'll also point out that we have obligations on world trade rules around how you manage the rules around purchasing. But I know also within government at the moment, there's quite active conversations. I'm part of active conversations around things like government procurement policy and how we might, that's a big lever in the economy. One of the ministers just today made a statement that, government procurement governments typically procure 30 to 40% of an economy's consumption, and that might surprise a lot of people. We're not talking about printer ink, we're talking about, people, but also, buildings and equipment. And if government's procurement can encourage local innovation and stimulate, business growth within the rules and guidelines of the WTO, then it's a really big lever to pull. So, I really am glad that we're kind of leaning a bit more into that.
Yeah, I mean, these elements are all important, but they're all recovery elements. The reason that we're so excited to have you on today is because you're not so much renowned for looking at today, but actually looking quite far out in the future. And at the moment, then it's like, I understand that you're knee deep in agritech, if that's possible. It's like, of all the sectors that you could choose to be able to help stimulate the higher value creation of jobs and companies through innovation, what is it about agritech that's really got you buzzing?
Yeah, there's a couple of observations you made here which are great. One is that we've got to be careful we don't just look at recovery. We've got to think about opportunity and growth. You're absolutely right. Like, recovery is important, don't get me wrong. Like, we've got tourism sector who absolutely desperately needs help. We've got other sectors of the economy that international education, whatever. But the opportunity lens is also big, and I'm working at the moment in a role within MB to help lead what's called an industry transformation plan. And basically, this was a piece of work we started pre-COVID, but actually COVID has just kind of underpinned this, which is that we're looking at what is New Zealand's comparative advantage with other countries, and where could we be putting more effort in to grab more value globally. And agritech, for me, when they asked me to have a look at it, is one that's to me, it's one of the most obvious places where New Zealand has got an opportunity to really excel, because it builds on our traditional strength on land. New Zealand for 200 years has been a pretty significant and efficient farm, and we've had technology and innovation all through that history for 800 years actually of history. So it builds on that, and then it brings in kind of what I think is one of the most exciting sectors of the New Zealand economy, the technology sector, which has just absolutely grown incredibly, and is now, I'm not crowing about it, but it's now probably the second largest sector in New Zealand after the food and beverage sector, given that tourism has just unfortunately fallen off a cliff. It marries these two things together and says, actually, New Zealand, if we could work out how to really accelerate the agritech sector, then we have the opportunity not only to create efficient, productive growth using great technology, but actually to see this as a sector that in itself has intellectual property that's valuable, and we could sell our technology internationally. So that's kind of the work that I've been doing.
Yeah, it was great. We had James Riddell from Wildeye on one of our webinars, calling from the US actually, a little while back, and it was great to hear him reflecting on on discovering new hyper niches and new channels inside the US that were driving huge growth. It's like this idea of the confluence of two things that we're really good at. We're really good at tech innovation, and we're really good at understanding the minutiae of high value agriculture. What lessons can the rest of us learn from the way that agritech thinks about innovation and value creation? What do you see every day that will be useful for us to be able to take away and reflect on?
Golly, if I knew the answer to that, I'd be off setting up lots of businesses. I've got some clues though. I mean, New Zealand's got some unique advantages. First of all, we're a very, and I'm going to go to number 8 why, but let me go somewhere else first. Well, I think we're a very easy and trustworthy place to do business. And for New Zealanders, we just don't even realise. It's like the goldfish doesn't realise the water that it's swimming in. Try and do business in another country, and you'll realise what a difference it makes to be in a jurisdiction where you can set up a business, run it efficiently, effectively, do your accounting and your banking and all these sorts of things in such a way that is so transparent and easy. And that is a huge advantage for us. We've also got, the people and high skilled people that are available, smart, canny, good people who are multi-skilled and can turn their hands to everything or anything. That's been a real, again, skill set that New Zealand has. And I think over the last 10 to 20 years, we've seen a much, much improved business environment in terms of things like the investment landscape, the way the angel investment community has really bloomed and blossomed in New Zealand. Government support, I'd have to say this is, now a word from our sponsor. Government support for businesses, any business growing, is actually significant, and we saw that through COVID. I mean, the commitment from central government in terms of wage subsidies or any kinds of interventions, but that's building on top of things like the work that NZTE and MB and Callaghan Innovation and IRD, so the government support network for businesses is significant as well. So you've actually got some really amazing ingredients for success. And then you add in New Zealand's traditional ingenuity, number 8 wire. So right now, it's one of the most, I think we're about to head into one of the most exciting periods of New Zealand's innovation. If we do it right, if we collaborate and work it out, because we are 6 to 12 months ahead of the rest of the world in terms of our recovery from COVID. We're in this little bubble of 5 million people where, I've heard quite a lot of stories in the last couple of weeks of significantly talented technological people who've moved or relocated back to New Zealand or are clamoring to get in. So we've got access to skills like in a way that we haven't had before. So I actually think we've got this huge opportunity to really capitalize on some of our strengths, and AgriTech's the one I'm kind of actively working in, but I can see that happening in other spheres as well.
Yeah, it's really exciting to learn of talent and capability coming back into the country again, because that's the very essence of recovery is more people thinking about more problems solving, coming up with more ideas. It's the pace of change is because everything's happening so quickly. The more people, the faster we can react. I mean, plenty when you talk about innovation and about this whole Kiwi spirit of ingenuity, you have done quite significant reflection on it, having written 2 books on the subjects over the last.
At the moment, actually.
And the third one, really.
For my sins, I'm writing one for Penguin Random House, which is all about the innovation and opportunity that has developed, and the good news stories that have developed through COVID. So, my mind's kind of completely in that space of what are businesses doing that are trying to create the conditions for success. Yeah. And that's where I kind of get these anecdotes from. It's like I'm talking to people who are really significantly seeing the opportunity. There's a guy I met yesterday who runs a technology company, quite advanced AI-based technology based in New Zealand, who through COVID, he was about to fly up to the US to find some venture capital. That was the first thing. So he couldn't fly, but all the VCs said, we still want to see you. And he ended up being able to see them much, much more easily. Normally when you go see a VC in the Silicon Valley, they go, we want you to live within 10 kilometers of us. We want to be able to see you in any moment of the day. Yeah. Today, that's no longer an issue. He can be remote. And then the third big thing was he went out looking for smart AI engineers and found, he said he could have hired a dozen people, ex-Google or Facebook engineers who've decided to relocate back to New Zealand or, in the process of shifting back. And so we've got this access to talent. And, Sir Paul Callaghan once said that we need to make New Zealand the place where talent wants to live. Mm-hmm. Well, we are, we're there. So now we need to know, how can we use the talent that's now wanting to live here? And so I think it's a tremendously exciting.
So through your 2.5 books that I'm giving you that.
It's nearly done.
2.95 books. It's like, what is it? It's like people and capability and ideas. They can happen anywhere, but there's something relentless about the spirit of this country. There's something that attracts talent from overseas to come and live here. What is it about the people, the human aspect of ingenuity and innovation that's fascinated you so much to put so much time and energy into documenting it and celebrating it?
It is a bit crazy. I every time I write a book, I think I'm never going to do that again because it's too much. You do. Well, because you meet amazing people. Like you really genuinely meet people who make you think. And I love just being surrounded by positivity. Like I'm a very optimistic person, and I enjoy the company of other optimists. And you find lots and lots of optimists in the tech innovation, ecosystem. Entrepreneurs are optimistic. Sometimes pig-headedly optimistic. If you went in expecting to fail, then you're going to have a very different approach than those who start up businesses and go in expecting to win. And so, I just love being surrounded by those sorts of people. And I think New Zealand, we can talk about the tall poppy thing or whatever, but I actually think generally most New Zealanders are really proud of the country that we've managed to collectively build. And yes, we've got a lot to work on, but but we're actually in the process now of, I think, coming to a period of our history. We've got the opportunity over the next 3 or 4 years, depending on what we all do, to really rocket back up the scales in terms of OECD.
Yeah.
To really think of ourselves as this is not a short-term thing for us. New Zealand's not got this short moment of time. I think we've got an inflection point in our history where we can now carve out quite a significant space.
So when you were you wrote the Recharge book in 2018, so just 18 months or so before this suddenly kicked off, and you were talking then about a golden era, a renaissance in innovation again, and now everything's changed. And now, from your optimistic take, even in this call today, it feels like that's become even more potent. Is that reflection of where your head's at?
Definitely. I think for me, and again, I'm an optimist, so I see the positive, but I understand that there's a lot of challenge. I mean, so again, complete empathy for people who are going through massive challenge. For me, the fog of COVID is starting to clear, and through it, you can see a path now for us as a country. And yes, we've got massive debt from the appropriate government spending, and we've got challenges. We're going to have massive challenges with unemployment. And we do need to do stuff about all of that, but at the same time, we've got this opportunity, a global opportunity, to be an innovator and a world leader in innovation, and genuinely carve out a space. And in the conversations I've been having over the last couple of months with international colleagues and collaborators, New Zealand has just been seen as this country that has got, they think we've done everything right. Now, we know we haven't done everything right, but we've done a lot of things pretty well. And so I just think, with appropriate leadership, and I'm not talking about just government leadership, I mean leadership from everybody, I think we can navigate quite nicely into a position of relative strength. We've got to make sure we bring everyone with us. This is one, I mean, we've got to be very careful we don't end up with this economy where we've got a whole lot of people who are doing extremely well and then a whole lot of people living on the breadline. That's not success in the long term. So thinking about what is the path for skills redeployment, and that's part of what these things called industry transformation plans that I said I'm part of. Part of it is definitely around, okay, how do we make sure that we've got the pathways for everybody to be part of that success?
It is funny that you bring up leadership as being one of the critical ingredients in this, because for natural optimists like yourself, just finding things that need to be done. Cafes that need to be supported, virtual flat whites that need to be consumed. It's that's just, you get up and that's just your world. But for lots of organizations, this isn't opportunity, it's change, because your markets have changed. The consumption patterns and the channels used by your consumers and your markets here and overseas have changed. It's change management, and as well as I do, but change management is one of the hardest things for companies to do. And I'm just really interested, you sit on a number of boards at the present moment. So you've got this wonderful perspective from both sides. Yeah. It's what are the challenges that boards are having at the present moment in grappling with the pace of change? Not the concept of it, but the pace that they have to deal with, and what leadership behaviors should they be exhibiting now to be able to get every organization up the pace we need to take advantage of this?
Guy, you're not asking easy questions like what's your favorite? Come on. I guess at that leadership, that board leadership level, or any leadership level, one of the challenges you've always got as a leader is you've got to be bifocal. You've got to have one eye on the horizon and kind of where are we scanning to, and then one eye, particularly lately, right at your feet. So board meetings over the last couple of months have been very interesting. You'd be right there tactically talking about the cash flow of the business, which is not normally something you talk about, or the headcount, or do we need to make redundancies, or can we get the wage subsidy, or really tactical but critical points. And then at the same time, you're going, all right, but where are we going to be in 2 years' time or 3 years' time, and how do we make sure the decisions we're making now are going to kind of get us there? And it might not be back to where we were before; it might be in a new direction. And certainly in the discussions I'm having for this new book that I'm writing called Silver Linings, out soon.
Plug time.
There's always plug time. I'll always be selling. That's another thing. But certainly in those conversations, the people that are managing to keep this really almost Jekyll and Hyde view of tactical today. How the hell am I going to survive?
Yeah.
And where can we end up? Where do we navigate? I think the other people that have been successful. I mean, I've been saying this for a couple of months, that the decisions we're making right now will determine the success of our businesses and our country over the next medium to long term period. And you don't make, and one of the skills of being a leader or anyone is making decisions in the absence of perfect information. We certainly haven't had perfect information lately, because we don't know. There's so much uncertainty. But if you're not a person that can thrive and make decisions and navigate uncertainty, then you're probably not an entrepreneur or a, you probably shouldn't be running businesses or organizations, because right now we are in the most, COVID happened at a time there's already global turmoil going on. Let's not forget, there was already some pretty significant challenges. We just threw another pandemic in the mix. So now but that's just normal. That's going to be it for the next 3 years, is if you've got to make decisions in the face of uncertainty and imperfect information.
This then, like that continual uncertainty and the challenges of that, does that make every business a business that should be led by entrepreneurs? If everybody's facing uncertainty and the need to change, it means that entrepreneurial spirit is mandatory in every industry, in every boardroom around the country, large or small.
I read a really interesting piece of work the other day about a psychologist, right? Which was, it was about chickens, actually. I'm an AgriTech guy, so I'll tell you a chicken story. And the idea is what this particular researcher was doing was going, okay, how do we make the best eggs? How do we get the most consistent and highest quality eggs? Why don't we get the chickens from all the different roosts that lay the best eggs and put them in one cage, and then we know that particular set of chickens will give us the best eggs. And of course, what happens is they fight, they kill each other, et cetera. And the better thing they discovered was actually to spread and create diversity by having some chickens that lay amazing eggs, some not so good, et cetera. But the net impact over time in terms of the generations of breeding will give you the better outcome. So I guess what I'm saying is, yeah, you definitely, having met lots of entrepreneurs, you do not want them running the country. Sorry, with the greatest respect, but you definitely need them as an ingredient. And then you need people who are really amazing at execution, and you need people who are really clear communicators, and it takes all sorts.
It does take, but your chicken theory here, if I could take it one step too far, because I like it. It's a new theory. There is a book in this as well.
Oh, there is.
And the chicken theory. It's like,
I've got a lot of chicken-related anecdotes. I could keep going.
This is like what you're advocating for here is actually is a change to a capability-based leadership inside boards. It's not, you're not replicating the same minds that might be on boards, but you're actually bringing in different skills that are more adept to navigating the uncertainty that we face for our domestic or for our international markets.
I tell you, the challenge I'd put it there right now, anyone who wants to and is thinking about how the hell do we navigate, is go and find some A, entrepreneurs, or B, maybe younger people. I'm just going to be a bit controversial there. People who are inexperienced in your field, people who have got completely different backgrounds from yourself, and bring together a diversity. Because right now is not the time for groupthink or same old. One thing I've seen recently that has been really useful is the rise of kind of junior board members, or people who come in it from a different point of view. I'm on one board where we've got like a 19-year-old straight out of school on the board, and it's wonderful. They ask really great questions. They kind of challenge the orthodoxy, and I think that could be a really interesting thing for businesses right now, to stop them getting into this kind of rut of, oh my God, we've always done it this way.
Yeah, I think the rut has now been, if it hasn't been completely squashed flat, it's now pretty much on its way. Nobody should be in any ruts by now. One thing that's still hanging around though from pre-COVID thinking is that lack of funding that's the size of our country, and unfortunately just it's just the reality of doing business here. We're always trying to do things number 8 wire and doing things on a smell of an oily rag. Do you think the reality of doing business in New Zealand is actually making us stronger in times like we're facing right now, or is this going to become a hindrance and we should be looking for alternative sources of funding to help accelerate us overseas?
See, I'm gonna invite people to, which always happens when someone asks me about this topic, and then I say what I'm about to say, and then I get all these emails of people telling me why I'm wrong, but I'm going to say it anyway, which is that I don't believe that there's not a lot of capital in New Zealand. I think that's bogus. And at NZT, we could tell you that, pretty empirically, actually, is that lots of people come to us and say, there's no capital in New Zealand, and you go, okay, let's have a look at that. What you're actually saying is you can't find capital. Okay, so let's have a look at why that might be. Is it because the capital doesn't exist, or maybe you're not quite right? And I'm sorry to tell you, it's like you or me saying, there's not enough women in New Zealand because I can't get a date. Well, maybe. Or men, whatever. But anyway, I would challenge that kind of very simple. It's a one-dimensional argument, one-dimensional model. Yes, there might be some pockets where it's challenging to find capital. But I was talking to a guy, entrepreneur the other day who's just on his third round, New Zealand-based business, third round of capital raising, $20 million US, did it in 6 weeks, 7 weeks maybe, because he's got the right product with the right proposition. Yeah. He's made great networks. You know what I mean? It's like the money's there, and at the angel level, there's lots of angels associations and people in New Zealand. At the VC level, there aren't as many domestically domiciled VCs, but there's definitely money that's willing to invest into New Zealand. We see it all the time. So I guess I would challenge people who are saying there's no money in New Zealand, and I say, well, maybe just have a look in the mirror.
It's time for an attitude shift as well. You will get emails for that.
I'm going to. I'm going
to. There will be calls. This is like what we're suggesting here is that actually the solution is within. To blame tall poppy syndrome, to blame the rut that your board is in, to blame the lack of capital is actually to be looking backwards as opposed to looking forwards at where the opportunities in the markets might be.
I mean, so at the risk of being sort of this Pollyanna, I genuinely think you've got to run your business and your life with a growth mindset, with an opportunity lens on everything. If you start blaming, you're immediately on the back foot. You're immediately not taking responsibility. So you can say it's hard to raise capital. I completely agree with you. You can say these are difficult times to navigate. I agree with you. You can't say it's the economy's fault or there aren't investors, because I don't agree with that.
Yeah. So this is it's about us to change as well. We're along with the jigsaw here to change. So from your especially with your looking at, in fact, the export world in particular, with your NZT hat on here, then do we possess that right attitude yet as a community to really dig deep into ourselves to do what it takes to be able to change and adapt our businesses for the markets which are changing, adapting just ever so slightly ahead of us?
I think if you talk to most of us that work at NZTE, we would say that we are blessed with great companies, and the one thing that we could probably do better as a country universally is have a higher aspiration for ourselves, have a higher kind of willingness or desire to do more and bigger, and and not an incrementalist way of thinking.
Yeah,
I'm summing up. I've been here about 10 years. We've talked to hundreds and hundreds of companies. They're all amazing in their own way, don't get me wrong. This is not a criticism, but it's like a general pattern as we see is we just do the next step instead of, and it's exceptional when we see businesses who go, actually, I want to be $1 billion business. The company I mentioned to you just before, who's bringing in these investors at the moment, who is hiring AI engineers, when I talk to him, he's like a $3-4 million maybe. Oh, he's not even making any revenue. And I said, what's the end game? Are you building to exit? And he went, hell no, I'm building $1 billion business. Right. So that's what we need. More crazy $1 billion business people. And the good thing for him is he's now got some patterns to work from. You look at Rod Jury, you look at Peter Beck, you look at the team behind Datacom. They didn't have those patterns. They navigated their way to there. But now we've got these patterns and models, and what we now need is more people with that crazy, audacious goal of $1 billion business.
It's like you are the published expert, almost 3 books worth of on historical innovation in this country. Has that sense of thinking big? Is it evidenced in where we've been, or is this something which we have to learn as a community?
We have to learn, and we're now going right back into sort of, I think, cultural psychology. We have to learn it because New Zealand is not great at talking about large aspirational things. We're not great at talking about money. We're not great at kind of going out there with a big, hairy, audacious, bold goal. We're getting better, by the way. We're not great. We're shy. We're a little bit. This is where the tall poppy thing comes in. We're a little bit like, hey, pull your head in, mate. And all the confluence of all of that is we can be incrementalist. Now, humility is actually a wonderful trait of ours. This is our dichotomy. It's nice to be humble. It's nice to be seen as a polite, a lovely nation of wonderful people who are not bragging. And yet, we need to have a little bit more oomph. One of the great advisors that works for us at NZT, we hire these people globally to kind of advise New Zealand businesses when they get to market. And he's a Dutch guy, this guy, and he said, what your businesses need is a bit more haka. The trouble is, when you get out there on the rugby field, you guys are ruthless and you're proud and you have incredibly high ambition. That's what you need in your business. And you're still wonderful and humble and sweep the sheds and all that sort of stuff. They're not mutually exclusive. Yeah. So I think if you talk to the NZTE team, most of us would say we just would love to see more ambition.
So if we can balance the humility and the haka at the same time, and we can do that in numbers, are you cautiously optimistic, even in your normal optimistic expense, about our ability to become a bigger, better, stronger country at the back of this crisis?
Yes. Don't ask a closed question. No, yes, I am absolutely. We've got a lot of work to do. I mean, I don't want anyone to think that I'm saying it's easy. It's not. Business is not easy. Life's not easy at times. But I'd absolutely think that we have got this opportunity to be to come out of the COVID crisis as a leader, both kind of intellectually, we're a leading light in the world at the moment already in terms of, lots of people look at us at the way we've dealt with the COVID crisis from a health point of view. They should also look at us and go, and look what they did with that extra time they bought themselves. They managed to transform their economy and bring everyone along for the ride. That should be our aim.
That sounds like the perfect place to pause here and to stop talking, to get on and take on the world. It's like, I'm going to finish
that bloody book.
It is. Well, I'm going to go and write a book. That's what I'm going to do now. David, it's been amazing having you join us today on behalf of the whole community who's listening to this as they get on with their work. Really, thank you for your inspiration and for the laughs and for the depth of knowledge in this space that comes through. It's magic. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to catch up and have a chinwag in a few months' time as well and see how you're doing. In the meantime, stay safe and all the best finishing those books.
Kia kaha. Thank you.